The door shattered inward. Meredith screamed, stumbling backward from the bathroom doorway, her toothbrush clattering to the stained carpet. The motel room, cheap, anonymous, paid for in cash, was supposed to be her sanctuary. 3 states away. A fake name scrawled in the register. No credit cards, no phone calls. Nothing that could trace back to her old life. But there he was. Kyle filled the doorway, his broad shoulders blocking the yellow parking lot lights, his face contorted with the fury she'd learned to fear over 5 years of marriage. 5 years of walking on eggshells. 5 years of covering bruises with long sleeves in summer. 5 years of apologizing for things that were never her fault. "Did you really think you could run from me?" His voice was quiet, controlled. That was always worse than the yelling. The quiet meant he'd already decided what he was going to do. Meredith's back hit the wall. The wallpaper was peeling, damp with age, and she could feel it giving way beneath her shoulder blades. Her heart hammered so violently she thought it might burst through her ribs. "Kyle!" She held up her hands. "Please, just let me go. I won't tell anyone. I won't go to the police. I just want to start over." He laughed. It was a hollow, terrible sound. "Start over? You're my wife, Meredith. Till death do us part. Remember?" He stepped into the room, kicking aside the splintered wood from the doorframe. Behind him, she could see the empty parking lot, the flickering neon sign that read, Pinewood Motor Lodge, the shadows stretching long across the cracked asphalt. No one was coming. No one would hear her. She was completely alone. "I'll make this simple," Kyle said, advancing slowly. He always moved like that, deliberate, predatory, like he enjoyed watching her cower. "You're going to come home with me. You're going to forget this little tantrum ever happened. And if you ever try something like this again..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Meredith felt tears spilling down her cheeks, hot and shameful. She hated crying in front of him. He always used it against her, called her weak, manipulative, but she couldn't stop. The fear was too overwhelming, too primal. "How did you find me?" she whispered. Kyle smiled. It was the worst thing she'd ever seen. "I'll always find you, sweetheart. Don't you understand that by now? There's nowhere you can go. Nowhere you can hide. You belong to me." He reached for her, his hand closing around her upper arm with bruising force, and Meredith did the only thing she could think to do. She screamed. Not for help. She knew there was no help coming. But because the sound was the only weapon she had left, the only way to express the terror and rage and desperation clawing at her throat. She screamed until her voice broke, until her lungs burned, until Kyle's hand clamped over her mouth and silenced her completely. "Shut up," he hissed, his face inches from hers. His breath smelled like whiskey. "You want someone to hear? Fine, let them come. I'll tell them you're my mentally unstable wife and I'm taking you home for treatment. Who do you think they'll believe?" He was right. He was always right. Kyle was charming when he wanted to be. Successful, well-dressed, quick with a smile and a firm handshake. The concerned husband caring for his troubled spouse. No one ever suspected. No one ever saw the monster beneath the polished surface. Meredith closed her eyes. This was it. This was how it ended. 3 days of driving, sleeping in rest stops, rationing gas station food. And for what? He'd found her anyway. He would drag her back to that house, that prison, and this time he wouldn't give her another chance to run. This time he might actually... Is there a problem here? The voice came from the doorway, deep, calm, carrying an authority that made Kyle's hand freeze on Meredith's arm. She opened her eyes. A man stood where the door used to be, surveying the scene with an expression of almost bored assessment. He was tall, taller than Kyle, with dark hair silvering at the temples, and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. Late 40s, maybe early 50s, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than this entire motel. He looked spectacularly out of place, and yet, somehow, he also looked like he owned the ground beneath his feet. Because, as Meredith would soon learn, he did. Kyle straightened, releasing his grip on her mouth, but keeping hold of her arm. "This is none of your business," he said. "Private family matter." The man in the doorway didn't move. His dark eyes flicked to Meredith's face, to the tears, the terror, the finger-shaped bruises already forming on her arm. And something shifted in his expression. Something cold and dangerous. "This is my motel," he said quietly. "That makes everything here my business." Kyle laughed, the same dismissive laugh he used when he was trying to establish dominance. "Look, buddy, I don't care if you own this dump. This is my wife. She's having a breakdown, and I'm taking her home. End of story." "Then why did you break down the door?" The question hung in the air. Kyle's jaw tightened. "She locked me out. She's not thinking straight. Like I said—" "You have a key," the man interrupted. "To this room that you claim your wife rented?" Kyle's hesitation was barely perceptible, but Meredith saw it. More importantly, so did the stranger. "Get your hand off her." It wasn't a request. Something in Kyle's eyes flickered. Uncertainty, maybe even fear, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. "Or what? You'll call the cops?" "Go ahead, I'll have this sorted out in 5 minutes. She's my wife. I have rights." "You have nothing." The stranger took a single step into the room, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "You have no rights here. You have no power here. And if you don't remove your hand from that woman in the next 3 seconds, you won't have the use of that hand ever again." The threat was delivered without heat, without drama. That was what made it so terrifying. This man wasn't posturing. He wasn't bluffing. He was stating a simple fact, the way someone might mention that it was going to rain tomorrow. Meredith felt Kyle's fingers loosen on her arm. His breathing had changed, shorter, sharper. He was afraid. She had never seen him afraid before. "Who the hell are you?" Kyle demanded. The stranger smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "My name is Vincent Caro," he said, "and you're standing in my establishment terrorizing one of my guests. I suggest you leave. Now. While you still can." The name meant nothing to Meredith, but Kyle went pale. "Caro," he repeated. You're Vincent Caro?" "I don't like repeating myself." Kyle's hand dropped from Meredith's arm. He took a step backward, then another, his bravado crumbling like wet paper. "Look, Mr. Caro, I didn't know. This motel, I had no idea it was connected to. It doesn't matter what you knew. What matters is what you're going to do now. And what you're going to do now is walk out of here, get in your car, and drive away. You're going to forget this motel exists. You're going to forget that woman exists. And if I ever see your face again, or hear that you've come within 100 miles of her, I will consider it a personal insult. Do you understand what that means?" Kyle nodded. He was sweating now, his face ashen. "Say it," Vincent commanded. "I understand." "Good. Then go." Kyle went. He didn't look at Meredith. He didn't say another word. He just fled. There was no other word for it, practically tripping over himself in his haste to escape. A moment later, she heard an engine roar to life, tires squealing on asphalt, and then silence. Meredith's legs gave out. She slid down the wall, her body shaking with delayed shock, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She wanted to cry again, but she was too drained, too hollowed out. She just sat there on the filthy carpet, staring at the broken doorway, trying to process what had just happened. Vincent Caro remained where he was, watching her with those unreadable dark eyes. After a long moment, he spoke. "Can you stand?" She nodded, though she wasn't sure it was true. "Then come with me." "You can't stay here tonight. Not with that door." Meredith looked up at him, this stranger who had just saved her life, and felt the first stirrings of something that might have been hope. Or maybe it was just relief. She couldn't tell anymore. "Why?" she asked. Her voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. Why did you help me?" Vincent's expression didn't change. "Because I could." He extended a hand. Meredith stared at it, the broad palm, the long fingers, the heavy silver ring on his index finger. Then she reached up and took it. His grip was firm and warm, and when he pulled her to her feet, she had the strangest sensation that she was being lifted out of her old life entirely. She had no idea how right she was. The office of the Pinewood Motor Lodge smelled like coffee and old paper. Vincent led her through a door behind the front desk, up a narrow flight of stairs, and into a space that seemed to exist in a different dimension entirely. Where the motel below was shabby and neglected, this apartment was elegant, understated, filled with leather furniture and dark wood and books lining the walls. A single lamp cast warm light over a sitting area. Through an archway, she could see a kitchen with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. "Sit," Vincent said, gesturing to the couch. "I'll make you some tea." Meredith sat. She was still shaking, still trying to comprehend the whiplash of the last 20 minutes. One moment she'd been certain Kyle was going to kill her. The next, this man, this Vincent Caro, had appeared like something out of a fever dream and made her husband run away in terror. Her husband. She had to stop thinking of him that way. He was her abuser, her tormentor, her past. "Who are you?" she asked when Vincent returned with 2 cups. Her hands trembled as she took one. "I mean, really, why was Kyle so afraid of you?" Vincent settled into an armchair across from her, crossing one leg over the other with a kind of predatory grace. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied her matted hair, her swollen eyes, the bruises on her arm that she kept trying to hide with her sleeve. "You're safer not knowing," he said finally. "I'm not safe anyway. I haven't been safe in years." Something flickered in his gaze. Respect, maybe. Or surprise. "How long were you married?" 5 years. "And how long has he been hitting you?" Meredith flinched. The bluntness of the question was like a slap, but also, strangely, a relief. No one had ever just asked before. Not directly. Not without hedging, or looking away, or pretending they hadn't noticed. "Since the honeymoon," she admitted. "It started small, a shove, a grabbed wrist. I told myself it was stress, that he was under a lot of pressure at work. Then it got worse, a lot worse." "And no one helped you?" She laughed bitterly. "Who was going to help me? His family loves him. My family, my mother told me to try harder, to be a better wife. And the police?" She shook her head. "I called once. They came, talked to him for 5 minutes, and left. Said there was nothing they could do. That night was the worst one yet." Vincent's jaw tightened. It was subtle, but Meredith noticed. She was trained to notice. Years of reading Kyle's moods had turned her into an expert at detecting danger in the smallest shifts of expression. But this wasn't danger, she realized. This was anger. Cold, controlled, deadly anger. But not directed at her. "The system failed you," Vincent said. "The people who should have protected you failed you." "Yes. And now you're here. In a motel in the middle of nowhere, using a fake name, hoping he won't find you." He paused. "But he did find you." Meredith swallowed. The tea was warm in her hands, fragrant with chamomile and honey, but she couldn't bring herself to drink. "He'll find me again," she whispered. "Won't he? No matter where I go. He said he'd always. He won't." She looked up. Vincent's eyes were fixed on her, and there was a certainty in them that made her breath catch. "He won't find you again," he repeated. "I'll make sure of it." "How? You don't even know me. Why would you?" "I don't like bullies." He said it simply, flatly, as if that explained everything. "I don't like men who use their fists on women. And I don't like anyone who thinks they can break down a door in my motel and get away with it." Meredith felt tears prickling at her eyes again. She was so tired of crying. "Thank you," she managed, "for what you did tonight. But I can't stay here. He'll come back. He's stubborn, and he's vindictive, and when he's not scared anymore, he's going to stay scared. Vincent rose from his chair and moved to the window, looking out at the parking lot below. The neon sign cast strange shadows across his profile. Your husband works for a commercial real estate firm in Boston. Am I right? Meredith stiffened. How do you know that? I make it my business to know things. His firm has been trying to expand into territory that certain associates of mine would prefer to keep undeveloped. It would be very easy for that expansion to fail. It would be very easy for his career to implode entirely, for his life to become so complicated that he wouldn't have time to think about you, much less track you down again. She stared at him, her heart pounding. Are you saying you'd ruin him? I'm saying he would face consequences. Finally, for the first time in his miserable life. Vincent turned to face her. Is that what you want? Meredith thought about it. She thought about the nights spent hiding in closets, the mornings inventing stories to explain the marks. She thought about the sound of his footsteps on the stairs, the way her whole body would tense when his key turned in the lock. She thought about the woman she used to be, confident, ambitious, dreaming of art school, and the shell she'd become. I want him to leave me alone, she said. I want to never be afraid of him again. Vincent nodded slowly. Then you won't be. It should have sounded like a fantasy, like the empty promise of a stranger trying to comfort her. But the way he said it, the absolute conviction in his voice, made Meredith believe him. Made her want to believe him. Why are you doing this? She asked again. The real reason. For a long moment, Vincent didn't answer. Then he moved back to his chair, sat down, and looked at her with an expression that was almost vulnerable. My mother, he said quietly. She stayed with my father for 20 years. He was worse than your husband. Much worse. And no one helped her either. Not until it was too late. Meredith felt her throat constrict. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was a long time ago. But I made a promise to myself. If I ever had the power to stop someone else from going through what she went through, I would use it. He paused. Tonight I have that power, and I'm going to use it. She believed him. God help her. She believed this man she'd known for less than an hour. What do I do now? She asked. Now? Vincent rose again, and this time there was something almost gentle in his demeanor. Now you sleep. There's a guest room through that door. Clean sheets, lock on the inside. You're safe here. We'll talk more in the morning. Meredith stood on unsteady legs. She was exhausted, wrung out, her mind spinning with everything that had happened. But as she moved toward the guest room, she paused. Mr. Caro. He turned. Thank you, she said. I know I keep saying it, but I don't know how to say anything else. The corner of his mouth lifted. Just slightly. Not quite a smile, but close. You could tell me your real name. She hesitated. The fake name, Emily Porter, was the only protection she had left. If she gave it up, she would be completely exposed, completely vulnerable. But then again, she already was. This man had seen her at her lowest. He'd seen the bruises, and the tears, and the terror. He knew her worst secrets. What was a name compared to that? Meredith, she said. Meredith Cole. Vincent nodded. Get some sleep, Meredith Cole. Tomorrow we start over. She closed the guest room door behind her, turned the lock, and leaned against it, breathing hard. Through the window, she could see the neon sign flickering, the empty parking lot, the dark stretch of highway leading back to everything she'd run from. But for the first time in years, she didn't feel afraid. Morning came soft and gray, rain pattering against the windows. Meredith woke slowly, disoriented by the unfamiliar ceiling, the clean white sheets, the smell of coffee drifting from somewhere beyond the door. For one blissful moment she didn't remember. She was just a woman waking up in a comfortable bed, with nothing to fear and nowhere to run. Then it all came flooding back. Kyle, the broken door, Vincent Caro, and she sat up so fast her head spun. The guest room was small but elegant, matching the rest of the apartment. Someone had left a set of fresh clothes on the dresser, jeans, a soft gray sweater, even undergarments still in their packaging. On the nightstand was a glass of water and 2 aspirin. Meredith swallowed the pills, changed into the clothes that fit surprisingly well, and ventured out. Vincent was in the kitchen, scrambling eggs at the stove. He'd traded last night's suit for dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, and for a moment Meredith just stood in the doorway and watched him. There was something almost domestic about the scene. Something that made her chest ache, with a longing she couldn't quite name. "You should eat," he said without turning around. "When was the last time you had a real meal?" She thought about it. The answer was depressing. "I don't remember." "Then sit." She sat at the small kitchen table while he plated the eggs, added toast and fresh fruit, poured coffee into a cup and set it in front of her. The smell alone was intoxicating. When she took her first bite, she almost moaned. "Thank you," she said around a mouthful of eggs. "For the clothes, too. How did you know my size?" "I have people who know things." It should have sounded sinister. Instead, it almost sounded like a joke. Meredith felt the corners of her mouth twitch, the closest she'd come to a smile in weeks. Vincent sat across from her with his own cup of coffee, watching her eat. She was suddenly very aware of his gaze, of the intensity of it, and felt heat creep into her cheeks. "I made some calls last night," he said. "Your husband is currently being questioned by the Massachusetts State Police about some irregularities in his company's finances. He's not under arrest yet, but he will be very busy for the foreseeable future. Too busy to worry about you." Meredith set down her fork. "You did that? In one night?" "I told you, I have people." He paused. "There's more. When the investigation is finished, he'll be facing serious charges. Fraud, embezzlement. He won't go to prison for what he did to you. The system doesn't care about that. But he'll go to prison for stealing from his clients. And when he gets out, he'll be a registered felon with no career and no connections. He'll be nothing." She should have felt triumphant. She should have felt vindicated. Instead, she just felt tired. Tired and sad and impossibly small. "Is that justice?" she asked quietly. "It's the only kind there is." Vincent's voice was hard. The law protects people like him. Money protects people like him. The only way to stop them is to take away the things they care about. Their status, their power, their reputation. "And that's what you do? Take things away from people?" He met her eyes. "Yes, when they deserve it." Meredith pushed her plate aside. She should have been afraid. She should have been running from this man as fast as she'd run from Kyle. But she wasn't. Because Kyle had used his power to hurt her, to control her, to make her small. And Vincent Caro, whatever else he was, whatever dark things he'd done, had used his power to save her. "What happens now?" she asked. "I can't stay here forever. I don't have any money." "I don't have anywhere to go. I don't even know where here is. You're in upstate New York, about 40 miles from Albany." Vincent set down his coffee cup. "And you don't have to go anywhere. Not until you're ready." "I can't impose on you like that. You've already done so much. I have a proposition." She blinked. "A proposition?" "I need someone to manage this property, handle the bookings, oversee the staff, deal with the day-to-day operations. The man who was doing it retired last month, and I haven't found a replacement. You could do it. You'd have a salary, a place to live, complete anonymity. No one would know you were here. No one would find you." Meredith stared at him. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a life, a new one, clean slate. No more running, no more hiding, no more looking over your shoulder." He leaned forward slightly. "But only if you want it. You don't owe me anything. If you'd rather leave, I'll give you enough money to start over somewhere else. and you'll never see me again." She should have said no. She should have taken the money and run, put as much distance as possible between herself and this man, and this strange, surreal night. That would have been the smart thing, the safe thing. But safety was an illusion. She'd learned that the hard way. And maybe, just maybe, there was something better than safe. "I'll stay," she said. Vincent's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted, warmed. "Good. Then let me show you the motel." The Pinewood Motor Lodge was larger than it looked from the road, 16 rooms arranged in an L shape around the parking lot, plus a laundry facility, a supply shed, and a small building that served as a residence for the on-site manager. Vincent walked her through each one, explaining the operations with the same calm precision he brought to everything. Meredith listened, asked questions, took mental notes. It felt good to have something to focus on. Something concrete and manageable and blissfully normal. But nothing about Vincent Caro was normal. She knew that. She knew it from the fear in Kyle's eyes, from the way Vincent spoke about associates and territory, from the luxury of his apartment above a rundown motel that clearly served as something other than just a place for travelers to sleep. She knew, and she didn't care. Maybe that made her reckless. Maybe it made her desperate. Or maybe, after 5 years of marriage to a monster who hid behind a handsome face and a nice suit, she'd lost her ability to be surprised by darkness. At least Vincent didn't pretend to be something he wasn't. "The couple in room 12 are regulars," he said as they passed one of the doors. "They come every Tuesday. Don't ask questions." Meredith nodded. "The ice machine breaks down once a month. Call Tony at this number." He handed her a card. "He'll fix it for free." "Why free?" "Because he owes me." She nodded again. She was learning not to ask. By the time they finished the tour, the rain had stopped, and weak sunlight was breaking through the clouds. Vincent led her to the manager's residence, a small but comfortable cottage behind the main building, and unlocked the door. "It's yours," he said. "For as long as you need it." Meredith stepped inside. The space was clean and well-maintained, with a bedroom, a bathroom, a kitchenette, and a living area that looked out on a patch of woods. It was modest, quiet, hidden. It was perfect. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, turning to face him. Vincent stood in the doorway, framed by the afternoon light. He looked different out here, away from the shadows and the neon glow. More human, more real. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "Just do the job. Keep your head down. Let me handle the rest." He turned to leave. Meredith heard herself speak before she could stop. "Mr. Caro," he paused. "Will I see you again? I mean, around, at the motel?" For a long moment he didn't answer. Then, "I'm here most weekends, and you can call me Vincent." Then he was gone, his footsteps fading across the gravel, and Meredith was alone in her new life. She stood in the center of the cottage, breathing in the unfamiliar air, and felt something crack open inside her chest. It wasn't pain exactly. It was more like the breaking of a shell. The first glimpse of light after a long darkness. She was free. She was finally free. Weeks passed. Meredith threw herself into the work. She cleaned rooms and ordered supplies and learned the rhythms of the motel, the Tuesday regulars in room 12, the truckers who stopped for a few hours' sleep on their way to Albany, the occasional couple looking for a discreet place to meet. She didn't judge. She didn't ask questions. She just did her job and kept her head down, exactly as Vincent had told her. But she thought about him constantly. He appeared on weekends, as promised, sometimes staying in the apartment above the office, sometimes disappearing for hours at a time. When he was there, he checked on her, not intrusively, but with a quiet attentiveness that made her feel seen in a way she never had before. He asked how she was settling in. He made sure she had everything she needed. Once he brought her a book, a novel she'd mentioned offhandedly that she'd always wanted to read, and left it on her doorstep without a note. She didn't know what to make of him. He was unfailingly polite, almost formal, keeping a careful distance that she both appreciated and resented. But sometimes, when he thought she wasn't looking, she caught him watching her with an expression that made her stomach flip. Intense, hungry, as if he was holding himself back from something. She told herself it was her imagination. She told herself she was still traumatized, still confused, reading things into innocent interactions because she desperately wanted to believe that someone could want her for something other than control. But then, one night, everything changed. It was late, nearly midnight, and Meredith was in the office going over the week's receipts when the phone rang. "Pinewood Motor Lodge," she answered. "Don't hang up." Her blood turned to ice. She would know that voice anywhere. In her nightmares, she heard it constantly. "Kyle." "Meredith," he said. His tone was calm, pleasant even. That was when she knew he was at his most dangerous. "I know where you are." Her hand shook so badly she nearly dropped the receiver. "How did you really think a motel job would hide you from me? I have friends everywhere, sweetheart. In the state police, in the FBI, in places you can't even imagine. Your new boyfriend might have complicated my life, but he didn't end it. And now I'm going to complicate his." "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that I'm outside, right now. And this time, your guard dog isn't here to save you." Meredith's gaze shot to the window. Through the rain-streaked glass, she could see headlights in the parking lot. A dark sedan she didn't recognize, idling near the entrance. "I'm giving you one chance," Kyle continued. "Come out here, get in the car, and we'll drive away together. Just like old times. If you don't, I'll come in there and drag you out. And it won't be pleasant." Her throat constricted, her vision tunneled. For a moment she was back in their house in Boston, frozen with fear, counting the seconds until his fist connected with her face. But then she remembered something. The way Vincent had looked at Kyle that first night. The way Kyle had run away in terror at the mere mention of his name. The way Vincent had said with absolute certainty, "He won't find you again." She wasn't in Boston anymore, she wasn't alone, and she was never going to let Kyle make her feel small again. "No," she said into the phone. There was a pause. "Excuse me?" "I said no. I'm not coming out there. I'm not getting in your car. And if you set one foot inside this motel, you're going to regret it." Kyle laughed, that same hollow, terrible laugh. "You think you can threaten me? You think you're safe because some local mobster has a soft spot for strays? Let me tell you something, sweetheart. I've already taken care of him. I made some calls of my own. Your Vincent Caro is finished." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. "What did you do?" "You'll see soon enough. Now get out here, before I—" He stopped. She heard a sound on his end of the line, something muffled, indistinct. Then nothing. The line went dead. Meredith stared at the phone, her heart hammering. For a long moment she didn't move. Couldn't move. Then she forced herself to go to the window and look out at the parking lot. The sedan was still there, but the driver's door was open now, and there were shadows moving around it. Large shadows. Multiple shadows. She should have hidden. She should have locked the door and called the police and waited for someone else to handle it. Instead, she went outside. The night air was cold and wet, smelling of rain and pine. Meredith crossed the parking lot on shaking legs, moving toward the sedan, toward the shadows, toward whatever awaited her there. What she found made her stop in her tracks. Kyle was on his knees on the asphalt, hands zip-tied behind his back, blood trickling from his nose. Two men in dark suits stood on either side of him, impassive as statues. And in front of him, looking down with an expression of icy contempt, was Vincent Caro. "Meredith." He didn't look at her. "Go back inside." She didn't move. "What are you going to do to him?" "Nothing he doesn't deserve." Kyle raised his head. His eyes were wild, desperate, the arrogance completely gone. "Meredith, please, tell him to let me go. I'll leave you alone. I swear. I'll never. Be quiet." Vincent's voice was soft, almost gentle. Somehow that made it worse. "You had your chance to leave her alone. You didn't take it. Now you face the consequences. You can't do this. Kyle was trembling now, his voice cracking. I have rights. I have lawyers. You can't just... I can do whatever I want. Vincent finally looked at Meredith, and what she saw in his eyes made her breath catch. But I won't. Not unless she asks me to. Meredith stared at him. He was giving her the choice. After everything Kyle had done to her, the beatings, the humiliation, the years of terror, Vincent was putting the man's fate in her hands. She looked at Kyle, at this pathetic, broken creature kneeling in the rain. She thought about all the times he'd made her feel like nothing, all the times he'd told her she was worthless, that no one else would ever want her, that she should be grateful he put up with her at all. She thought about how good it would feel to make him suffer the way she had suffered. And then she thought about the woman she wanted to be, the woman she was becoming, the woman who had walked away from her old life and refused to let it define her anymore. Let him go, she said. Vincent's expression didn't change. Are you sure? I'm sure. She stepped forward, stopping just in front of Kyle, looking down at him the way he had looked down at her so many times. But I want him to hear something first. She crouched down so they were eye to eye. You don't scare me anymore, she said quietly. You have no power over me. You're going to leave here, and you're going to go back to whatever's left of your life, and you're going to forget I ever existed. Because if you don't, if you ever come near me again, or try to find me, or even say my name out loud, I won't ask them to let you go a second time. Do you understand? Kyle nodded. He was crying now, tears cutting tracks through the blood on his face. Meredith stood up. We're done here. She turned and walked back toward the office, her legs steadier than they'd been in years. Behind her, she heard movement, Kyle being hauled to his feet, the sedan's engine starting. But she didn't look back. She was finished with him. Finished with that chapter of her life. She was inside, leaning against the desk, breathing hard, when the door opened and Vincent came in. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, You surprised me. I surprised myself. Most people in your position, they would have wanted revenge. Meredith shook her head. Revenge wouldn't have made me feel better. It would have made me feel like him. Something shifted in Vincent's expression. That warmth again, bleeding through the cold. You're a remarkable woman, Meredith Cole. She felt heat rushing to her face. I'm just tired. Tired of being angry. Tired of being afraid. I want to move on. He took a step toward her, then another, slowly, giving her every chance to retreat. She didn't. What do you want? He asked softly. Right now, in this moment. What do you want? Meredith looked at him. This dangerous, complicated, enigmatic man who had pulled her out of the worst night of her life and given her a reason to keep going. She thought about all the reasons she should keep her distance. All the ways this could go wrong. All the wounds she was still carrying from the last man she'd trusted. Then she stopped thinking. You, she whispered. I want you. Vincent closed the remaining distance between them. His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheek, and then his mouth was on hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, as if he was afraid she might break. But then Meredith made a sound, a small, desperate sound, and something ignited between them. He pulled her closer, one hand fisting in her hair, and she grabbed the front of his shirt and held on for dear life. The world fell away. There was nothing but heat and hunger and the feeling that she had finally come home. When they broke apart, they were both breathing hard. Vincent rested his forehead against hers, eyes closed. I've been trying not to do that for weeks, he murmured. Why? Because you've been through too much. Because you deserve better than someone like me. Because... Stop! She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I don't want better. I want real. And you're the most real thing I've ever known. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite name. Awe, maybe. Or wonder. As if he couldn't quite believe she was there. "This won't be easy," he said. "My life, there are things you don't know. Things that would make most people run." "I'm done running. Meredith, I know what you are." She held his gaze, unflinching. "I know what you do, and I know that you saved me when no one else could, when no one else would. So don't tell me I deserve better. Let me decide what I deserve." For a long moment he just looked at her. Then, slowly, he smiled. It was the first real smile she'd ever seen from him. Unguarded, almost boyish, and it transformed his entire face. "All right," he said. "All right." A year later, the Pinewood Motor Lodge was unrecognizable. Meredith stood on the newly paved driveway, watching the guests pull in for the grand reopening. The building had been renovated from top to bottom. Fresh paint, new fixtures, landscaping that actually looked intentional. But it still had the same quiet, hidden charm that had drawn her in that first desperate night. It was still a refuge, just a better one now. "You're sure about this?" Vincent came up behind her, wrapping an arm around her waist. "We can still cancel. Go somewhere else. Let other people handle it." She leaned back into him. "I'm sure. This is where I started over. I want to be here." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Then we stay." They'd been through a lot in the past 12 months. More than Meredith ever could have imagined. She'd learned who Vincent really was. The full scope of his empire, his influence, his power. She'd met the people who worked for him, seen the world he inhabited, understood the lines he walked every day between order and chaos. There had been moments when she'd been terrified, moments when she'd wondered if she was in too deep. But she'd also learned who he was underneath all that. The man who brought her books without being asked, who held her when she woke up from nightmares about Kyle, who looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world, even when she was wearing pajamas and her hair was a mess. She loved him. She loved him with a ferocity that scared her sometimes, and she knew he loved her back. Tonight, though, she was nervous. Not about the reopening. That would be fine. She was nervous about what came after, because she was planning to tell him something. Something she'd known for 3 weeks and hadn't been able to say. Something that was going to change everything. The evening passed in a blur of champagne and conversation. Meredith played her role, the gracious hostess, the competent manager, and watched Vincent play his. He moved through the crowd with ease, shaking hands and making small talk, and no one who didn't know better would ever have guessed what he really was. He was charming, polished, civilized. But every so often he would look over at her, and she would see it, the hunger underneath, the need, the unspoken promise of what would happen when they were finally alone. Finally, mercifully, the last guest departed. Meredith locked the front door, turned off the lights, and found Vincent waiting for her in the office. "Well?" he said. "How do you feel?" "Like I could sleep for a week," he smiled. "I had something else in mind." "I know." She moved toward him, then stopped. "But first, I have to tell you something." Vincent's expression shifted. Concern, wariness, the protective alertness that was always just beneath the surface. "What is it?" Meredith took a deep breath. She'd rehearsed this so many times, in the mirror, in the shower, in the quiet moments before she fell asleep. But now that it was happening, all the words flew out of her head. So she just said it. "I'm pregnant." Silence. Absolute, ringing silence. Vincent stared at her, his face completely unreadable. And Meredith felt her heart plummet into her stomach. This was a mistake. He didn't want this. He wasn't ready. She should have waited, and then he moved. He crossed the room in 2 strides, pulled her into his arms, and kissed her so deeply she forgot her own name. When he finally released her, his eyes were bright with something she'd never seen before. "You're sure?" he demanded. "You're absolutely sure?" I took 3 tests, I'm sure. He laughed. Actually laughed, a full, genuine, joyful sound that filled the room and made Meredith's chest swell with emotion. We're having a baby, he said. He broke off, shaking his head in disbelief. I didn't think this was something I could have, something I deserved. Meredith cupped his face in her hands. You deserve everything. Don't you know that by now? He kissed her again, softer this time. Then he sank down to his knees in front of her, this powerful, dangerous man kneeling at her feet, and pressed his forehead to her belly. I'm going to protect you, he said quietly. Both of you, with everything I have. I swear it. Meredith ran her fingers through his hair, tears streaming down her face. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, broken, terrified, checking into a motel under a fake name. She thought about the door shattering inward, and Kyle's hand on her arm, and the certainty that she was going to die alone and unmourned. And then she thought about now, about this man at her feet, about the life growing inside her, about the future spreading out before them, vast and unknown and full of possibility. She had never imagined she could be this happy. She had never dared. Get up, she whispered. I need to ask you something. Vincent rose, looking at her with those dark, intense eyes that still made her heart skip after all these months. Meredith took his hands in hers. Marry me, she said. He blinked. What? You heard me. Marry me. I don't want to be your girlfriend. I don't want to be the woman who lives in your motel and has your baby. I want to be your wife. I want to be your family. He kissed her, hard and deep and possessive, and when he pulled back, they were both breathless. Yes, he said. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Meredith laughed through her tears. Is that a formal acceptance? It's the only answer there's ever going to be. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her, and she felt his voice rumble in his chest. I love you, Meredith Cole. I love you more than I knew it was possible to love anyone, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know it. She buried her face in his shoulder, breathing in the scent of him, cologne and coffee and something uniquely him, and felt the last of her armor fall away. She had checked into a motel under a fake name. Her ex had found her anyway, but a Mafia boss owned the motel, and in the end he gave her everything she'd ever wanted. Safety, love, and a future she never dared to dream.